You're listening to episode 3 of the Propaganda Report with Monica Perez and Brad Binkley. Today's episode is brought to you by The Cloud. When you get tired of lugging that basket around, upload your deplorables to The Cloud. The Cloud, where your information will probably get hacked. On today's episode, baskets of deplorable propaganda, the media framing effect, the alt-right and the move towards one party, and propaganda to look out for. Here's Monica Perez.
This is Monica Perez with Brad Binkley, and episode 3 of the Propaganda Report, where we tell you what the news really means. Hey, Brad, you ready?
I am.
All right, I'm going to dig right in with the story of the week, in my opinion, the famous Deplorables quote of Hillary's. She said to an LGBT fundraising dinner organized by Barbara Streisand, the big hullabaloo this week was that she said that Trump supporters were what I call a basket of deplorables. That's what she said. And I'll tell you, as soon as I heard that, I just had this mental image of Les Mis, like Miserable, which was this, well, everybody knows it's a musical, but the image it invokes were these people, it's like that expression, Les Mis, has an underlying feeling that these are those who are held in contempt by society, but they're really victims of society. They're the wretched, unwashed, but they're sympathetic. Like if you actually see the musical, that Jean Valjean went to jail for 19 years for stealing a loaf of bread for his starving niece. So these people were really victims. And that was the image I had in my mind of this basket just teeming with the great unwashed. And to my surprise, and I don't know what, I'm not taking credit for being prescient, but when I opened the Wall Street Journal this week and saw the article, Les Deplorable, it was written just like, as a matter of fact, here, if we have a little video, I'll give you my, visual aid of the picture of the article with the imagery from Les Mis. So I don't know. I mean, I didn't figure it out. They wanted that. And this article, I want to talk a little bit about it. But obviously, there was an image that was meant to be evoked, and it worked on me. She delivered it. And when she said, what I call, I thought to myself, somebody wrote that for you. You don't call it that. Like, you're reading it. But this guy, Wall Street Journal guy, who looks to be supporting these people, it looks like a sympathetic article. He's playing into it. I want to get into that, but I wanted to get your reaction for what's going on there with that imagery.
Well, they're trying to create a group of people, like you said, that they can outcast, put into a basket, and just kind of push off away from America. Hillary actually says in that speech they're irredeemable and they're un-American. And she's trying to create a group of people that even people who support Trump, there's two groups of people who support Trump, the way they're identifying them. There's those people who are enthusiastic about it, and there's those who think he's the less of two evils. She's trying to cast the people who are enthusiastic about Trump as un-American, deplorable, people who are a threat to America, or are a threat to the lives of everybody else, a demon.
She actually, in that very speech, classifies, she said half of them are these deplorables, and the other half are people who feel the government has let them down, the economy has let them down, nobody cares about them, and they're just desperate for change. Right. So it was a kind of reactionary thing. She does identify them. Oh, this is what I was going to say. What she does while she paints this picture of the deplorables, she also gets sympathy for them, and that gives them some power, some standing. It paints them in a certain light. But it reminds me of what you were saying about her coughing fit a while back, that you did a video about Hillary having this coughing fit before she was diagnosed with pneumonia, which most people think that, she's the conspiracy theory is that she's super duper sick. My conspiracy theory is that she's not sick at all. And this is a game because they're showing you this stuff. They're feeding it to you on a spoon. And I just think back at FDR, who was actually paralyzed and managed to hide that. So it reminded me then I thought immediately when she was diagnosed with pneumonia, I thought, man, Binkley was right. He was like that coughing thing. But your interpretation was that she was getting sympathy. That was one of the purposes of that. And I just feel like there's a lot of parallel tactics going on right now across the whole campaign. And this feels parallel to that victim thing to me.
Yeah, I can see that creating some sort of sympathy for those Trump voters who are supporting him. She's definitely creating characteristics of a group of people that are distinctly separate from everybody else, and I mean, I don't know. I think her sickness thing is definitely.
Yeah. What was your reaction when you heard that pneumonia thing? Like, what? As it unfolded in a way, the way you were seeing it.
Spectacle to me. And they talk about how, it was an independent journalist who got the video who was somebody standing with an iPhone, holding a phone up to film her with a Secret Service agent directly in front of them who saw. They would not have allowed us to see that.
And there were two angles. And she was leaning against the thing, and then she started. It looked totally fake to me.
It's a spectacle. It humanizes her. Hillary needs to be humanized because everybody thinks that she's evil and just kind of distant, and it makes her appear to be strong when she comes back and is able to get through the election. And it also enables her to take all those people who she labels as deplorables and say, see how crazy they are? This is evidence of how crazy they are.
Oh, yeah. There's definitely that. But I have to say, I wondered if maybe the whole thing was just about getting her a few days off, like to get her Botox on, or remember when Robert Gibbs, the press secretary, got all the media onto a plane, and Obama and I think Hillary and even maybe McCain went to the Bilderberg meeting.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I
thought like maybe this is just a diversion so that she can go secretly meet with
to the spa,
David Rockefeller
or the Rockefellers. Yeah, maybe she just wants a few days off. Anything to keep her away from people, I think, is what she wants, while making people think that she is a genuine, authentic person, as opposed to a monster.
I want to just say a little more about this article. It says that the subtext is Hillary Clinton names the 5 phobias of Donald Trump's political supporters. She calls them racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, and Islamophobic. So this guy writes, she puts back in play what will be seen as one of the 2016 campaign's defining forces, the revolt of the politically incorrect. This is something that I noticed throughout the treatment of this and throughout this article. He says these people, the les deplorables, are this writhing mass of unheard Americans who rebelled against the intellectual elite's ancien regime of political correctness. So he's bringing the French Revolution feeling forward. But later on, he says, Donald Trump's appeal, in part, is that he cracks back at progressive cultural condescension in utterly crude terms. These people are fed up. So he writes all this stuff in the tone of a reaction. And so rather than make it feel like these are people like the Tea Party was or Ron Paul Revolution was who have real principles and actual positive message. Yes, they were angry, but they had a message. Here is the answer. They weren't reacting. And when you react, you validate how they frame the argument. So by reacting, by saying you're framing everything by race and you hate white males, white males are better. that doesn't
Yeah,
negate, that doesn't neutralize the framing the issue that way. It empowers it. And this guy is saying, oh, these people are right, blah, blah, blah. But he says stuff like his appeal, Donald Trump's appeal, is that he does this in crude terms. The way they paint even this guy, the way these intellectuals, even on the right, are painting them. And I also noticed that on Fox News and mainstream online sources from the right. They also are putting these people into the basket. And that basket it's really separating the world into two different classes. Like, these people are emotional, they're angry, they respond, they want what's there, they want a piece of the pie, they don't know how to get it. Who can blame them for being angry? I get this. I have a lot of different articles to bring out what I believe is what's going on under here. But that's the feeling that
I agree.
I think, they're all trying to pigeonhole these people. And these people, just because they didn't go to college, doesn't mean they didn't understand the basic American principles that Ron Paul and the Tea Party. I mean, when I went to march with the Tea Party as a Ron Paul supporter against Obamacare, I mean, it was maybe it's possible every single person was wearing like a shirt that looked like the American flag and had a fanny pack on. I mean, this was middle America. Fanny packs everywhere. I mean, this was middle America. And it didn't, there was another article in the paper that said farmers want student loan forgiveness because they sent their kids to college and then they came back and couldn't pay the loans. I'm like, okay, so if the farmers are going to college, who are these people who don't get it, who just have to emote, and this is what you get. This is the backlash you get from these unwashed, deplorable people. Even this guy who sounds sympathetic is making that point.
Right. I agree that they're separating the groups. I have an opinion about what they're trying to do about it that might be a little bit extreme, but I think it's more about the term that she's creating as opposed to who they are right now. I think they used alt-right because it was an existing group that when she presented the traits during her speech, that people could go online and search that group, and they could, through confirmation bias, they could say this group does exist. There is an uprising, and then she could take that term and she could apply it flexibly to anybody who she associates with them, which means anybody who disagrees with Hillary or who falls outside the mainstream. That's Bernie supporters, that's independents, that's libertarians, that's anybody who it's advantageous to Hillary to say, oh, that person just revealed information about me that might be true. That person's a member of the alt-right, and that will be a shutdown trigger for everybody else.
There's also an alt-left, which I thought I was going to coin it because it's another AstroTurf thing. I was reading an article. I was watching a video of Shane Smith, the founder of Vice, which is supposed to be this like alternative, whatever, interviewing Edward Snowden in Moscow while Snowden takes apart an iPhone. And isn't he America's most wanted, Edward Snowden? It was so contrived, so ridiculous, so made up. And I thought, are these guys the alt left? Because the way Hillary was talking about alt was, conspiracy theory stuff was an essential element. And I thought maybe the alt left are people who also embrace alternative narratives to the official story. So, but I discovered that they've coined alt-left to be Democrats who are also white backlash people. Like they made it all racial. And then you have people saying, I am socially, I'm fiscally liberal and socially conservative, which I guess I didn't even know really. So they don't like the PC language, but they do want welfare. And I thought an alt-left, it would be nice to coin a term alt-left to identify a group on the left who also questions the official narrative, but they're having none of that.
Yeah, that's interesting. My sister told me the other day that, and I had no idea, I'm totally ignorant to this, but there's Gay Pride Week, and then there's Black Gay Pride Week.
Do they rumble?
I don't know, but apparently there is a lot of racial tension.
Like West Side Story.
Yeah,
really?
Yeah.
Really?
So that speaks to what you're talking about there.
So like another subdivide.
Right.
underneath that group so that even they can't get together and say, what are we putting up with all this crap for?
Exactly.
Why are we labeling ourselves just micro, which for me, the smaller your group, the better. I like the group of one. I'm an individualist, but I absolutely hate the collective characterization, like collective groups. And I've been noticing it for years, this racist strain or putting things in terms of race, that the backlash against political correctness. There's a lot of anti-Semitism like that too, where they just will put racial or ethnic slurs. You can't discuss any real issues at all. It just shuts down the conversation. But I noticed it, and what it does is it negates the libertarian principles that, and like the founding of this country and Christian principles, that it doesn't matter. The in-group, out-group thing doesn't matter. So there was always group evolutionary behavior. You can see it, like the Masons, the Skull and Bones, like they hire their own people first before they'll hire equally qualified people who are not in the in-group. And and it promotes their group. They are more, Scientology does that in Hollywood. So the libertarian answer, and I think Christ's message was this, that you don't do that. You treat everybody equally. And you actually do not need, they drill down into characteristics of the group. So they're like, well, there's a bell curve, so some races are smarter than others, and that's why there's more success. But if you look at that, you have, like, Europeans are not at the top of the list. Middle Easterners are above Europeans on that, on that, stacking that up.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the point is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The liberty and justice for all thing, if that's the way it works out, if there's a natural elite, maybe there's a natural elite just of IQ. Maybe that's what rises to the top. I mean, I don't know. In sports, it's obviously there's an elite. I could never be a professional tennis player.
Don't sell yourself short.
Maybe I could, but I don't know. And it doesn't seem like it. I'm just saying that by framing it, by framing it in reactionary terms, it accepts the premise. It's that dialectic. It's thesis, antithesis, synthesis. But the libertarian view and the fundamental American view is not about, doesn't accept or react even to that thesis. That thesis is outside of the political realm. It doesn't matter. All we really want is true liberty, true justice, not social justice, true justice. Like, if you do something wrong, you get punished. If you don't, they leave you alone. Liberty and justice go hand in hand that way. And beyond that, have your own beliefs, do whatever you want. It does not belong in the political realm. And everybody on both sides seems to be making it political.
Right, and that's they use the justice and liberty as a way to get people to support them. They present their programs and their ideas as, we need this to strengthen liberty. And when you actually dig deep into the program, it's not that. So they just use those words to get people over emotionally. And what you were saying a second ago about people being categorized, they're doing that in the media too. They actually brought up a study based on what you just said about white people who were given a survey, and the percentage of them that said that white people were smarter than black people or smarter than Mexicans. And they were using these polls as evidence, as proof, that they called it, that Trump supporters are bigots. This is what they've been doing in the media. They've been presenting evidence of proof, saying absolute proof, and,
right.
And it's unbelievable.
And if even with Mark Twain's lies, damn lies, and statistics, I'll tell you, that stuff can be so manipulated. I'm going to add one: surveillance cameras, video footage, because that's another thing where it's like, oh, we have absolute proof, but if they cut the edges off,
right, and
it's out of context, you have absolutely no idea. And just, I wanted to, before we move on, this art of ambiguity that we talked about last time, where, like with the Black Lives Matters things, it's never a clear a clear-cut case. The video's never clear, blah, blah, blah. So I saw today an article in the paper that showed, it says, Ohio boy with BB gun killed by police. And that's a picture of the gun, which really looks like it actually says in the article, it's identical. It's like a replica of the guns the police use. So it was obviously meant to look like a real gun. And what he did, a witness called in that 3 people were engaged in armed robbery. So the cops were responding to that. But so people who are reading this article can either say, look at those cops. And it says in the article, the cop was white and the boy was black.
Yeah.
So it says that. So then you could read the article, but then it says he was engaged in armed robbery. So if you already think in those terms and you're just like, oh, he was a thug, it just feeds into that. And I've noticed it for so long. So stuff that just like wanted to bleach bit my computer after like visiting a couple of sites that were fairly popular. And I saw stuff that was like made up, stuff that wasn't even true. Yeah. And I realized somebody is promoting this and just, you have to wonder why. But
what you're saying right there, and there's a great, it's all over the media, but there's a great example of it that MSNBC, The Morning Joe, used the other day, but it's a propaganda technique. It's priming effect. They're priming people to feel and believe a certain way about something before they even read it. And psychologically, even if you are, they've done tests on this, even if you are against something that is in the content and the context of it, by priming you with all this language, which is what Hillary was doing during that speech and what the media has been doing since then, to prime people for the alt-right and the deplorable comments, is you still are biased. It affects your bias. Even if you understand what's going on, by getting primed, it still affects you. And that's what that article is doing. In the Morning Joe, the example they did in the Morning Joe was they were presenting a media clip of Mike Pence responding to a question about David Duke. And his response was, they keep drilling down on David Duke. His response was, we denounce him. We do not want his vote. We do not want anybody who's like him. We do not want their vote. And then Wolf Blitzer tries to put in his mouth, so you'd say he's deplorable. Yes. So that Hillary could then take that term and generalize it and say, see, even Trump's vice president thinks his followers are
It was
are
a crazy thing. It was like, say the word,
right.
say it.
That was a concerted effort, because the way if you just watch that clip in isolation with no priming and nothing else, everybody watching it who understood that they're trying to get that soundbite from Mike Pence would go, oh, that's a reasonable response. That's a completely reasonable response. But the way they presented it on the Morning Joe is they spent 5 minutes going, Donald Trump has some nerve, and then just bashing and just setting those primes up. And then right before it, Mika goes, somebody else goes, well, can we watch the clip of Mike Pence now? And then Mika goes, yes. If you haven't died inside, get ready to die inside.
Oh, my
gosh. Deplorable.
Get questions like Mike Pence got yesterday.
Can we run the mic? I'm sorry, Mike, and then you respond to this.
This is the type of thing that makes you die inside.
This is what happens. Oh, I'm already dead inside.
Get ready to just, if you haven't died inside.
Or lose. I mean,
you will now.
So this is why Hillary Clinton may have died.
And just over the top, that's unbelievable how they're priming people right now.
They tell you how to think. The one last thing I wanted to point out was there's something a little deeper going on here, which is that it was a carefully crafted term that people in that group are embracing, like queer. You're just like, hey, man, I'm going to own that. And then it diffuses it. So I'll tell you, overnight, I had numerous Twitter followers change their handles. So I had Deplorable Reb, I'm your deplorable Muslim for Trump, and T-Mott, the Minister of Truth, Atlanta's own, had a meme up with his face, and it said adorable, deplorable. And he is adorable, so it was perfect. But he just embraced it. They embrace it. And you can't help but think that it was set up that way. It was set up, it's this dialectic thing, and then you embrace it. And like the alt-right thing, so many people did that to me, like us on the alt-right. I'm like, you know what? If we accept that definition, I'm not on the alt-right anyway. I mean, I actually read the article of the guy who coined it, the article that he coined, which was when he coined it, December 2008, Paul Gottfried, The Decline and Rise of the Alternative Right. And it's not, he seems like a former libertarian. It's not super offensive, but I don't think I'm that. I'm a libertarian. He makes fun of libertarians. But you love one of the really, I thought, over the top YouTube videos I posted where somebody said, oh, this defines alt-right. Here you go, Monica. And at the end, it was kind of messed up because in that article, in that video, I actually transcribed it and wrote down every single thing the guy said. And there were all these nods to what I want to talk about in a minute, populism, where he says, these are all the things that are alt-right. Welfare is a safety net, not a hammock. But the real right, anybody on the real right doesn't like welfare. It's just not something you want. It says Americans will do jobs better than illegal aliens. They just want a higher wage. Really? People on the right want minimum wage to go up? We want lower taxes to create jobs and build business. No, you don't. You want lower taxes because they're stealing your money. I mean, what is he talking about? But at the end, and I just realized, at the end, he says, if Hillary thinks you're a bad person, you're probably pretty fantastic. So he set it up so that you would embrace the term alt-right, deplorable, to embrace the term out of reaction to her. But when they define it that way, it's what are you supposed to do? It takes away any possibility to join. That's why I don't want to give up on the word capitalism.
Right. Well, that's a dangerous thing that they're doing, I believe. If Hitler thought you were a bad person, you didn't want to be thought a bad person to Hitler. His deplorable baskets were called concentration camps.
Oh my gosh.
And
well, Stalin and Hitler didn't like each other in the beginning.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that you're better.
Yeah, I'm just saying that people who are like you're saying, people who are embracing this idea, if they really look at what Hillary is trying to label them as and trying to make people who support her see them as, then embracing that idea 6 months from now, 2 years from now, if Hillary is in office, could come up to backfire when she says, let's start shipping those deplorables out of the country in little baskets in the ocean.
No, she needs them. She needs that. She needs someone for people to hate.
Right, to like be mean to her.
For people to rally behind her. Yeah, exactly. To be mean to everybody. They're mean to everybody. Yeah. So I noticed this, I recalled an article from a long time ago, from 2012, where they said, do you remember this? It was a leaked strategy document for Obama that called for, it was widely reported, I don't know if this was paraphrased or whatever, abandoning the white working class. Do you remember that?
No.
I remember it very distinctly because I thought, why would they leak that strategy? Why would they even write that? Why would you even really write that? And I remember thinking, what could that possibly mean? Why? Now, that was 4 years ago, which happens to be when Trump... No, that was 5 years ago. That was November 2011. Trump did register Make America Great Again in 2012, by the way, which is earlier than his kids said that they didn't even know he was running for president until last year or whatever. Right. I mean, it's a little weird. But I just feel like this idea of isolating the white working class as a despised group, that was in the report from Iron Mountain. It says you need an enemy as complex as society itself. So it's useful to take a group within society like a despised minority or despised ethnicity, for example. And I noticed this with like the Bundy Ranch stuff when Hillary came out and said, those gun nuts have half of the country terrified. So I've seen them trying to glob those people together, but this is what they're doing. They're converting the what would be the real problem minority to the big government types on the left and the right are the Ron Paul revolution people and the Tea Party. The people who want smaller government. That's the only threat to the establishment. And in a great article I wrote, which you should read, about Irving Kristol's book, Neoconservatism, the autobiography of an idea, he talks about, I've mentioned this many, many times, but he talks about how he was a neo-Trotskyist, a neo-whatever, all these things that were totally on the left. And lastly, he was a neoconservative. He had started the counter-culture revolution with John Potterist or whatever his name is. So what he said was the GOP needs to get this into their head. There's no point in winning elections if all you're going to end up with is a small government. So make government bigger, even if you have to bring the country to its knees by layering welfare program from the left on top of welfare program from the right. We'll just have a battle royale for who gets to run it, which is how they do it in England. Yeah, that's how they do it in England, is the conservatives aren't for small government. They're for who can run this giant government better. And I have a lot of stuff to support all those things I just said, but I thought
was that the report on Iron Mountain you said?
Oh, the report on Iron Mountain is super short. I should write a summary of it, but it's so darn short. You might as well read it. It's like 80 pages. And it was a best-selling nonfiction book from the 60s. And it talked about, the subtitle was On the Possibility and Desirability of Peace. So after the nuclear bombs were invented, they knew they could never really gin up another big war. So what were they going to do to keep the hierarchy in place? That's what it called for.
Okay.
Social structure in place. And they said you simply have to have a substitute for war. There is no other answer. You have to have
one enemy
enemies
for another. Yeah, that's that.
Right,
I mean,
so,
that's verbatim what it describes in these propaganda books from the 1920s. I mean, verbatim.
Yes.
What you just said. That's what Hitler did.
You should read it. One of the things it says is you could gin up an environmental hoax that would unite the world behind a world government.
Yeah.
But it would be hard because you'd have to get the entire scientific community to kowtow, and that's going to be tricky. You could deliberately pollute the earth, but someone might catch you.
Yeah, what was it? It was Galileo while he was being dragged to his death saying, it still doesn't revolve around us.
No, he recanted.
He recanted, did he?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Actually recanted. I think that what's going on here is very serious. It's the move towards the one party. I feel like this is all about moving towards the one party. And so in Hillary's alt-right speech, she said, she mentioned by name respectable Republicans that she considered kind of under the same tent as real politicians. Yeah. And it's funny. I actually started a hashtag, one party now, or there's one party now, something like that. And I happened to notice just an article about a book Dick Morris wrote in 2014 called, now Dick Morris was
like her best
a
friend.
defector.
Yeah.
What?
Like her best friend as he advertises that book.
He got Bill reelected in 96. Single-handedly. He was the David Axelrod of Bill's 96. But he compromised. He did it by compromising, and people were mad. Real liberals were mad because he compromised, moved to the middle. But then, I guess for that reason, Bill Clinton kind of kicked him out of the tent, and then he went rogue.
Yeah.
And now he's on Fox all the time. And he was the one who said, if the Democrats still had a conservative wing, I'd still be a Democrat. I'm like, what? Maybe, I guess there is a conservative. I really don't know.
Yeah.
I was never made a study of the Democrats. But his book was called Power Grab, Obama's Dangerous Plan for a One-Party Nation. Now, as soon as you slap Obama on there, to me, it diminishes what really is going on. Obama's just a puppet. He's not the mastermind. This is a multi-generational plan here.
It plays into that divide and conquer, though, while still revealing some truth. It's not a limited hangout, but there's another term for
that is what a limited hangout is, where they put some truth out there in order to serve a higher purpose, and they're willing to take the hit. That's what I think Snowden was.
Oh,
and if you go back, I had a whole list of the articles that I read. There was one in the New York Times about metadata collection from 2008. From Bush from like 90. No, when was it? No, 2008. George W. Bush was president in 2008. Yes, it was from that. A New York Times article revealing the big reveal of Edward Snowden.
Yeah, before.
Yeah, there were numerous ones like that.
Yeah, see, my problem with Edward Snowden and Julian, the other guy, is that whistleblowers used to hide out in caves and change their name and appearance. Now they have like regular segments where they're giving information on Fox News.
Yeah. Oliver Stone's making a movie in real time about Edward Snowden, and Laura Poitras, all of a sudden there was like this 10-minute interview in a hotel room, but then she wrote a documentary where she had these crazy shots from like across the street through his window. Like she had a complete production crew up for this guy before anyone even heard his name, and it won an Oscar.
Yeah.
So I think it's baloney. But the thing that I was, that this one party thing, what's significant about it to me, or how this ties into what we're talking about is, it's this word, it keeps coming up, populism. Like that is some kind of grassroots thing on the right. And it's totally not. And how it's defined is not that they want small government. It's that they want what's there. So there was an article just in today's paper that said, where was it? It's a far cry from the here it is. Donald Trump promises tax cuts offset by robust growth. Here's the quote. It says, Mr. Trump's embrace of higher spending and tax cuts, by the way, are a recipe for debt. And if you think that this is just simply about money and the military-industrial complex, that is simply, in many cases, the big thing. The reason they even just want wars is for debt. To me, it's energy, defense, and finance are the big three in the military-industrial complex. And they want debt. They want big spending and lower taxes so that they can just keep business going. And they like wars create spending,
and debt
justify spending. So it says Trump's embrace of higher spending and tax cuts to boost the economy marks a noticeable shift for the GOP from a few years ago when the Tea Party movement rebelled against bailouts and demanded greater attention to deficits. For Mr. Trump, growth is a much higher priority than deficit reduction, said Stephen Moore, an economic advisor to Mr. Trump. That was in today's. In yesterday's, let me tell you, in yesterday's paper, an article by Greg Ip said, fiscal policy across the developed world is collectively turning more stimulative for the first time since the end of the recession. It signals a profound shift in the political winds. Globally, the rise of political populism has pushed deficits down the list of priorities while elevating tax cuts and benefits for the working class. I mean, the reason I want to talk about, like the reason I even want to do this show, what we do, why we're doing this way, is that these articles are not reporting the news. They're framing stuff. They're creating the world.
Yeah.
It's like I wrote in one of my margin notes, does saying it make it so? And I think it might.
Yeah. It's a pseudo environment. We get most of our information not from direct contact, but from sources that filter and distort it, and that becomes our reality. And that reality isn't what is really going on. It's what is projected to us by people with self-interest.
Well, you were touching on that a little bit earlier, where if they tell you what to think, that's what you think. Yeah. If they poll it in a certain way, do you agree with most Americans that Trump supporters are racist?
Exactly.
I guess I agree with most.
That's questions, yeah. And that book I told you about, the CIA recommends their agents reading, like the one they would recommend their agents all reading, talks about framing and priming effects in order to influence the reality of the people that they're working with, or that they're manipulating.
And they used to supposed to not do that to the American public, but there was a thing called the Smith-Mundt Amendment a couple of years ago that said, oh, they can do it to the American public now.
I don't
and
even
that's
know.
When this
that baffles me as much as anything else, because it's not like before then they weren't using propaganda on us and they suddenly said, okay, now it's legal. Like they've been doing it systematically for such a long time.
No, it's to keep people from going to jail as they ramp it up.
Okay.
They don't want to have to go to jail for it. They don't need scapegoats. They can make them. They can promote them.
Right. Give them good jobs and labels.
when you look at, I was reading some 9/11 stuff. James Corbett has a good series of like people who were in government, U.S. government during 9/11. And like some of the one guy is like amazing failure to scramble jets in time. One of the planes was in the air for like an hour and a half. And that guy was like, yeah, I don't know. I just couldn't figure it out. He got massively promoted. He was a hero. He got like awards.
He couldn't figure out what the plane. Was this the NORAD guy?
Single-handed. I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I saw that video. I know who you're talking about. Yeah. He's just like,
I don't know. I can't. Next question.
Hey, do you want a promotion?
Like, oh, here's your medal.
Yeah, that was a good video series. It was like the suspects of 9/11, and he goes through each and he profiles each individual suspect.
Yeah, he did a great job. I'm sure it's been out there for a long time, but I just noticed that they don't hold people accountable, and then you don't even think twice about it. It's very strange. Right. But I wanted to. God, you can say what you want to say.
For their goals, it's a matter of that perspective. Again, from our perspective, we think that their goals would be something that would be to the benefit of all, or to the benefit of how we perceive things. But his goal was probably to do exactly what he did. So he accomplished his job. So he got the promotion, even though it looks like he failed.
Right. Oh, that's what I was saying. Is that it would be hard to. I mean, I guess it's not that hard to pull that off, to keep people out of jail, not only keep them out of jail, but promote them. But still, if you need more and more low-level people to do stuff like that, if you're really going to ramp up false flags and create this, what's called the strategy of tension, if there really is a Gladio B, which is like a operation where there's false terrorism in order to influence the politics of the people, you're going to need a lot of people in on it, and maybe you're going to want to be able to show them, hey, it's not even illegal. But not to beat the economic thing to death, but I wanted to just mention this populist thing is, to me, a way that they are moving the American right, which is very different. The American right, it just means conservative. Conservative means the ways of the past. The past in this country is the American experiment, liberty and justice for all and small government. But for Europe, conservatism is they don't want to change the ways, but their ways bubbled up from a medieval distribution, literally medieval distribution of land, like in a feudalist society. So it's not like every little person had land. Like here, if you go to Texas, there's so many millionaires from Oklahoma who were farmers, and just there was gas and oil under their land. They're so crazy rich because they own the rights on their little piece of land down to the ground and up, to the center of the earth and to the heaven. And that, because we had a different tradition of property ownership, we don't have that impossible to escape class system. You can go. I noticed this in London, like the people who owned the squares like 300 years ago still own the buildings. They have this thing called a 99-year lease, always reverts back to those. It's very common to do it that way. And they're families whose greatest failure would be if one of their descendants had to get a job. Wow. So their attitudes, like the left and the right there, it's like both sides embrace this idea, well, there's nothing we're ever going to be able to do about that. They call them capitalists, but they were really feudal lords. Yeah. So all we can hope to do is try to get some of that money back, try to get some of that money for us, because they just didn't leave us enough. They gobbled up all the land, all the property, all the wealth, all the resources. And on the left, they had this international communist thing, workers of the world unite. But on the right, at the same time, was like a nationalistic socialism thing. That's what the Nazis were, national socialists, where they had this idea of ethnicity and wanted to keep it in the, that redistribution or whatever within the confines of the country. But that's not really an appropriate approach in the United States. Like the grassroots right is not thinking, oh, I just want to get mine and you stole it from me. Nobody stole it from anybody. You know what I mean? There's still land to be had. There's still, I was reading, I don't know if this is true statistic. I couldn't figure it out, but I couldn't get it right for sure, confirm it. But I think something like 5% of the wealth in this country is inherited, which means that it's all up for grabs when people, they inherit it and then they piss it away. So it only happens 1 generation. So I just feel like it's very artificial, but it's all about big government, central control, central planning. And when I was wondering from the beginning what this Trump PSYOP really was all about, I had some ideas, but I really feel like now that he is suggesting that unemployment benefits cover maternity leave and all these kind of socialist programs, it seems to me that one of the goals for his role was that. And I have a couple of quotes to support that. Go for it. Tell me what you got.
That would make sense because he won people over to his way, so he won them over emotionally. Then what that enables him to do is bring in a program that people would have initially rejected had they not already accepted Trump the person. So
right,
yeah, so that he wins.
Yeah, he brought them in, and now he's leading them to this other place, which you could predict because he was a Democrat basically for a long time. But here's the article that just absolutely my flags were tripped. It says, this is the article, the title, Republicans are slow to back Donald Trump's paid maternity leave plan. Democrats criticize the proposal as insufficient compared with what Hillary Clinton is offering. Okay, so here's in the article, it says, if more Republicans sign on, Mr. Trump's plan could turn the paid leave debate from a partisan standoff over whether to create a new benefit into a discussion over how generous it should be and how it should be paid for. So it just changes the discussion. And it says, so then there's a quote from Cynthia Loomis, a Republican from Wyoming. There's a Republican from Wyoming. She says, I'm just so delighted to have a Republican talking about maternity leave because it finally puts Republicans in the debate.
Right.
I mean, what debate? We already decided there's no debate. It's no more debate.
Said she was a Republican?
How big? She is a Republican.
Okay.
Cynthia Loomis, Republican, Wyoming. So he is doing, at first I thought what he was doing was like the opposite of what Elizabeth Warren does for the Democrats. I thought he was like being crazy on immigration so that the GOP would have an excuse to react and get kind of more liberal on immigration. Because the GOP power elite want the immigration really, truly, I believe, to lower wages and stuff for their corporate clients. But I thought that he would be there as a reactionary force to stimulate a reaction, whereas Elizabeth Warren just moves, and so does Bernie Sanders, just moves the center to the left. But now Trump is actually moving the center to the left. He's just completely giving up on, there's just no small government principles at work here. And I think that's the one party now.
Yeah, and the way that people who support him will describe it is as, well, he's a problem solver. He's just looking at the situation, and he's saying this is the best way to solve this problem. And so he's applying this program that would otherwise be viewed as, socialistic or democratic, or as a Democrat's program. Does that make sense?
Not really.
The way that is, like, if you when you challenge somebody who supports Trump on that, oftentimes the answer is, well, he's a problem solver. So he's taking the problems as they come to him, and he feels that this is the best way to solve that problem.
Yeah, but that's what a central planner does.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Central control.
Yeah.
But here's the actual issue with that, and it's Hayek wrote an article I saw referred to. Yeah, Salma Hayek. She's this fantastic economic thinker. You wouldn't know that.
Yeah.
She is super hot, too. No, but her uncle, Friedrich Hayek, no relation.
Yeah,
just kidding.
He's pretty hot himself.
He wrote an article that was the foundation of Wikipedia, the mental foundation, according to Jimmy Wales, the actual founder of Wikipedia. But the article was about the nature of knowledge, that no one in the world knows everything, but everyone in the world pretty much does know everything. So the pricing mechanism, so that was the idea behind Wikipedia, that if everybody contributes, everything will be there. Now, I think it's totally controlled. I don't think everything's there. Look at Wiki Obama and tell me if that's 7 billion people contributing to that article or if it's simply written by one guy. But the economic principle for Hayek, who wrote The Road to Serfdom, by the way, was that the pricing mechanism is a perfect reflection of all information in the world. So if you leave something on the shelf, the price of that thing is going to go down. If you clean out the shelf, the price of that thing is going to go up. It is a perfect reflection of the wants and needs of the people and the cost of producing. So if something costs more to produce, then if you have to pay more for the materials and you can sell it, it goes away. It's just perfect. And that's the basis of free markets. So his problem solving has to be inferior to individual choice because the pricing mechanism is absolutely perfect.
Oh yeah,
it's my economic moment.
And the idea behind that is the same with more minds can better solve problems than one mind can, or a small collection of minds. And the whole idea of big government is that a small collection of minds that believe themselves to be more intelligent than the masses try to solve the problems of the masses.
But that's the actual problem with them.
Yeah.
Because they think they are more intelligent. Yeah. They think they're superior. Then they think that they should have more rights.
Exactly.
They really think that. They really think of us as different.
Yeah, like a higher race of being almost.
Yeah, they were the deplorables.
We're the deplorables. Yeah.
You can't blame them for being stupid animals. They're just,
I know.
Those are the two choices. Hillary blames them for being bad, but the guy in the Journal feels sorry for them for being disgusting.
We're just disgusting and bad, and we walk around singing songs about how pathetic we are all day.
Yeah, but I would be totally fine in the basket of deplorables, but I'm not any of those things. I'm not any of those phobes.
That doesn't matter that we're not any of those things. What matters is whether or not Hillary can point to something about us, and for like me and you, it would be a conspiracy theory, and say, see, that's confirmation that they are a deplorable racist bigot who will kill your family. So let's ship them out.
I'm afraid of the shipping them out thing, that's for sure. So that's about all I've got. Did you want to tell us about TPP update? Or do you have other stuff on the alt-right populism?
I didn't have the only thing I noticed on the TPP, I haven't gone into the substance of it, was that Kasim Reed was meeting with Obama and some other people at the White House to talk about the TPP. And every time I think about Kasim Reed going to the White House, it reminds me that he was at Bilderberg a couple of years ago before the whole CDC thing, where the hero doctor who sacrificed his own serum when he was over in, I think it was Libya.
Oh, yeah, the Samaritan's Purse guy, which Samaritan's Purse, by the way, like Doctors Without Borders, is widely regarded as being a kind of front.
Yeah.
So it's a way to cover for spies and stuff. And I'm not saying they don't do good work and aren't real doctors and all that kind of stuff, but I looked into it, and there was definitely some pre-existing theories out there of what those organizations are about. And I told somebody that, and she came back to me later and she said, Doctors Without Borders just won the Nobel Peace Prize.
Oh,
and
so did Obama.
See?
Yeah,
See? I told you. And she was just like, what do you mean? I was like, that proves my point.
They're not going to give the Nobel Peace Prize to anybody.
Just somebody.
There's a guy who was a military doctor who did research for the Navy for decades, and he got extremely close to, he discovered the mechanism for regeneration in humans through experimenting with frogs. And then they cut off his funding. Like, he was that close to the Nobel Prize, which of course he didn't win. They cut off his funding. They made his life hell, made it difficult for him to do anything for the rest of his life.
The Lejeune, I think the guy's name was the doctor. He was absolutely poised to win the Nobel Prize for his work with discovering maybe the gene for Down syndrome, something like that. My son has Down syndrome, so he's like popular in our community. And he wrote to his wife after he made this speech about that it's like genocide to just kill them for that, so that you should just still think of them as human beings, even though. And he wrote to his wife, there goes my Peace Prize. And it did, like, not the prize for peace, but the Nobel Prize. And he did not get it. So he's like a hero in the Catholic Down syndrome community. Yeah. But they are very political about that, which is why I was always amazed that Mother Teresa won the Peace Prize, the Nobel Prize for Peace, because she did use that opportunity as a platform to talk about abortion, which for me, I'm a libertarian. I know there are two sides of the issue, but I respect the moral position, and that I've read the speech, it's quite moving, but that organization has just become so political that it has to serve the agenda.
Of course, yeah. So if you win that, then you're either going to be killed soon, or you're going to be used for something bigger, or you know that you're being used for something bigger. I have an article that relates to some of this that I found. FBI agents can pose as journalists, Inspector General says. FBI agents may impersonate journalists while conducting undercover investigations, and an agent who posed as an editor with the Associated Press during a 2007 investigation did not violate any agency policies, the Department of Justice Office of the Investigator General found in a report released on Thursday.
It always cracks me up when I see crossover in that. I think it's John Miller is John Miller the guy? He's a journalist. He got the exclusive on the Jahar Tsarnaev penned, where the Jahar Tsarnaev, when he was dying, which I think he's dead, even though they say he's not.
Who is it?
Jahar Tsarnaev, the younger brother of the Boston Marathon bombing.
Yeah. He
penned a confession with a ballpoint pen on a fiberglass boat while he was shot like 6 times. Yeah. And the only guy who got to see it was, I believe it was John Miller, the journalist.
You're telling me you're getting fired at, you're in fight or flight mode. Your brain does not have the higher resources to cognitively create a creative act of writing a letter. And that's hardly even possible with the way our brains work when you're under fire.
Yeah, I just didn't believe it. But the guy who did it, I'm trying to look it up right now.
I'm being fired on right now as I write this in my own blood. This is ridiculous.
Yes, it was on CBS News. John Miller, that was his name. CBS News correspondent John Miller. He used to be the head of PR for the FBI. That was his job.
Head of okay, that's PR.
Is that funny?
PR means propagandist. Like that's what propagandist was changed to back in the 20s.
What does FBI need PR for?
Right.
So he was the guy, and I'm like, okay, he's an FBI agent. People are like, no, he used to be.
Right. That's funny. Oh no,
he's definitely an FBI agent.
He's clean. That reminded me.
He's just a journalist now.
What you just said reminded me. One of those polls that MSNBC was citing as proof. They cited an article that was written by somebody who worked for the Washington Post, and then they cited a poll that, when you look into it, was conducted by the Washington Post.
What?
So they said it was a Washington Post article that MSNBC was using to say, here's proof that these deplorables are racist bigots. And they cited a Washington Post article, and within that Washington Post article, they cited a study. Now, when you look into it, that study was conducted by the Washington Post.
Oh, I have noticed that so many times where, like, you'll look up all the footnotes. I always look at the footnotes. I took a book back once because it didn't have footnotes. If one book I had, all the footnotes were from the guy's own work.
Yeah.
So,
it cites...
Oh, it's like you can't footnote this fact by another article that you referred to that fact in.
Who's your source?
Where'd the fact come from?
I'm my source. It doesn't.
Yeah.
That's what they do, though.
There are investigative journalists. I read a book called Dollars for Terror, and he was talking to CIA agents, and he was quoting them. So you just have to believe he was or believe he wasn't. But boy, is that a good book. I wrote a summary of that on my website if you want to check that out, monicaperezshow.com. So this is not all I got, but I can't get too much into the nitty-gritty of all the populism stuff and the English stuff. They're saying I might point out a few things to keep aware of. There's usually a lot of parallel tactics in the campaign. There's also parallel tactics in the Atlanticist countries, the West, So the Brexit has, I had a couple of quotes about, I was saying that Trump said, don't worry about deficits anymore. I'm just paraphrasing these articles, what they're saying. This says same thing happened in England. once the Brexit happened, the new prime minister said, we just need to get people what they need. Deficits are not a priority. Same thing happened in Germany. For the first time ever, they're proposing, or in modern, living memory, they're proposing tax cuts, but not spending cuts. So just all around the world, they're going out of their way to pump up debt, to give up on any kind of idea of constrained government. I see that. Another thing that's kind of weird, that we were talking about the TPP earlier. The heat is really on to get that thing passed in a lame duck session, which is a super dirty trick, since this is the seed of a world economic government anyway. Exactly what Barry Goldwater warned us about. But I noticed a couple of things. First of all, the head of Malaysia, we're really going to go off track here. The head of Malaysia, for some reason, they're just trying to get rid of him. They're just trying to get rid of him ever since the Malaysia 370, which I also wrote a great article about, cracking the code on that. I know where it is. You can look it up, MonicaPerezShow.com. I really do.
Sell it on eBay.
No, it's the only place they didn't search in the search area was directly below where the plane just fell out of the sky, which it did. Anyway, but I have so many details about that. But ever since then, and I wondered in the beginning, why did they use the MH17, another Malaysian flight over Ukraine, which you can see there are videos of a soldier taking fresh, clean passports out of his trunk and throwing them around the area. And one of those passports was like the girl's picture. Yeah, crazy stuff, but it was targeting Malaysia. And then ever since then, I said, maybe they're trying to get rid of the government of Malaysia. Maybe there's some kind of coup going on. And for a couple of years now, the Wall Street Journal has just done all these articles on what a piece of crap this guy is, and he's corrupt, and they're just trying to get rid of him. And he calls it, of course, a Western-backed coup. But I wondered if that had something to do with the TPP, that maybe these guys aren't completely on board with it. Maybe they don't want to play ball. And then I saw the Philippines guy. Remember the Duterte guy, whatever his name is? I don't know how to pronounce it. That is his name. Called Obama a son of a bitch or a son of a whore.
Yeah,
Did you hear that story?
That, yeah.
I immediately called BS on that. I looked into it. I think what he did was it was, one thing said it was the State Department. Others said it was the press corps.
Translation problem, right?
Well, I mean, it was deliberate though. And they were just hounding him relentlessly, provoking him, baiting him. And I think he said, son of a bitch. You know, like you would just say son of a bitch, nothing to do with calling Obama that. And I thought, well, they just wanted a little drama. Yeah. But then there's a huge article today about this guy, some really not credible witness saying that he had people killed. So the Wall Street Journal headline is, "Witness says Duterte had people killed." And then you read the article and it's like, 5 paragraphs in, it's like, this witness has credibility problems. This guy said there's absolutely no evidence. Duterte wasn't even in the country, that, stuff like that. Why is that in the Wall Street Journal? Completely debunked article. Yeah. Huge headlines.
The articles about Trump raping somebody that they were countering the whole Bill Clinton pedophile and rape cases with. They got the headlines. Nobody reads past the headlines. But then when you look into the person who brought it, it was a guy who used to be a producer for the Jerry Springer show, who was like the publicist of this girl. And he has a history of taking advantage of crisis. Like during the O.J. Simpson trial, he said he had evidence that O.J. was buying drugs on the day of the murder. And it was totally bogus.
Was buying what?
Was buying drugs on the day of the murder. Like he's been presenting this evidence throughout his career that was just completely bogus for the purpose of.
But that's his job. Yeah, and that's his job, is to make up stories.
But they put that article about him, about this rape case, as headlines.
Yeah, they put stuff in the headline that's just amazing to me. I mean, in the article's like, this headline's been totally debunked. Right. And I'm like, well, why is this an article in the Wall Street Journal? It's like 10 pages in that first section.
Our attention is so sparse that we capture a headline. And if it confirms a belief, it becomes true in our mind.
Yeah, it's beyond that. That was really, it was unscrupulous. But my point is just, I'm just raising the flag to keep this Philippine guy in your sights. And I wonder if it has to do with the TPP, because that TPP is really important to these people. They've been working on it for a decade. They are not going to let that go. So I wouldn't be surprised if it passes in the lame duck session. And just like we were enraged by Obamacare, it doesn't mean we're going to fix it.
Okay, so keep a lookout for this guy related to the TPP.
I'm just... All right, not good enough.
No, I'm enforcing it in my mind, so I'm making a mental note. That's what I'm doing.
Yes, I just wish I could pronounce his name, and then we wouldn't. I wouldn't
Son of a
have
whore
to
guy. Keep an eye out for son
just
of a
say
whore
that guy, the Philippine son of a whore.
I got a couple things to look out for too. If you're not, are you?
No, I'm looking for a picture of this guy.
Keep a lookout for those continued provocation tactics, like you were just describing, on the side of Hillary provoking people to say that she's sick and dying, because they can capture those phrases and those words, and they can then regurgitate them later and use them as a way to demonize people. So look out for that. Look out for those priming tactics in the media of them presenting how to feel about a story before they tell you what the story is, and look for the discrepancy between what's the an emotionless read of the story versus what they were adding to it. Because if you watch like this MSNBC clip, you see a complete just exaggerate. It does not match the reality. It's over the top. So look out for those priming effects in the media.
And it's even can happen after. So when we saw the Gary Johnson thing where he says, what would you do? And Barnacle, we talked about this last time. What would you do about a Lepo? And Gary Johnson says, what is a Lepo? And Barnacle starts laughing at him, openly mocking him, and saying, you have to be kidding. I can't believe you don't know that. What's the matter with you? So that you do that too. That's what he was doing. I want, first let me show you this, can you see this? This is the, wait a second, that's me, like the ink is me screaming at the paper. Like,
killings.
Yeah, and then this is supposed to be a picture of people grieving over the killings, but it doesn't. It says people grieving over somebody killed. I mean, it's just, no idea if that's the right picture or anything. But if you read the article, the witness does not seem very credible. But I was just demonstrating that, the huge headline on page A6. I mean, that's some prime real estate, and the article doesn't hold up. But I wanted to tell people that we can, if they want to comment in any format on your website, on my website, under the YouTube video, we can read the comments and address your questions and stuff next time on the air. So my website's MonicaPerezShow.com. Where do you want people to go?
Mine is freedomactradio.com, and I do most of my stuff through video on YouTube. So you go to my because I don't have you have to have like 1,000 subscribers.
What's your channel?
You have to have 1,000 subscribers to have a channel ID. So it's a bunch of numbers. So go to my website, and from there you can see my YouTube page at the top of it.
Okay, and you want people to subscribe because that'll be better for you?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
In layman's terms.
Subscribe to my YouTube page.
Okay, I think that's it. Do you have anything else?
One more thing I want to mention because it's relevant this week is Trump. And I'll find the audio and I'll put it in here. Trump recently was talking somewhere, and there's audio of him saying, well, usually when I perform, I do whatever. And he says perform.
It is hot, and it's always hot when I perform because the crowds are so big. These rooms were not designed for this kind of a crowd.
So that's what he sees, what he's doing. And then there's a book that I mentioned last week about getting Nixon into office. How to selling a president, and Roger Ailes plays a prominent role in it. And towards the end of that book, there's a line from Roger Ailes, and it says, "From here on out, the person who gets elected president is going to have to be a performer." And I thought it was ironic because Ailes is working with Trump now, and that line that Trump used.
Oh yes, and my daughter could not believe it when I mentioned that Trump was a WWE superstar. Yeah. So I posted recently, maybe I'll put it in the show notes for this on my website, a video of him body slamming. I don't know what you call it, like jumping on top of
tightly hugging
Mr. McMahon. He knocked him over and, bounced on top of him and then shaved his head. And it was
it was a really violent hug.
It was so funny, but it was definitely a performance, and it was so believable. I mean, Donald Trump was like super serious. He's like, I'm telling you how it's going to be. And I was
He's good at it.
Well, he is good at it. So tomorrow, well, I shouldn't say tomorrow because it won't even be up by then. September 17th is Constitution Day. So people should get out your Constitution. You can just read it. If you just read it, it's super short, you'll get the whole thing. Or even just read the Bill of Rights, one page. Bill of Rights. I'd actually like to hit one Bill of Rights Bill of Rights. One of the amendments of the Bill of Rights. Maybe do a little bit on each one of those over time. If you want that, write it in the comment section, and I will just address each one of the amendments in future shows. Okay, that's all I got.
That's all I got.
All right, awesome. This is Monica Perez with
Brad Binkley.
And this has been the Propaganda Report.
See you guys later.
Of hypocrisy. Have you had enough? Of the spending spree. Have you had enough? Does it make you want to scream and shout? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Have you had enough? Of the rubber stamp.